Jerry.
What's going on, my people? Welcome to the Sn95 Power Channel. Right off the back, let's get into today's topic. So let's talk about this recession buster, aka Coyote buster. So first off, let me say this. We're not against coyotes. We're not against 5.0 liters, but we are against those LS swaps.
It's the Thugger Shruggers ball.
All seriousness, swap what you want in these cars. Personally, I wouldn't swap an LS and a Mustang, but to each his own. So let's rewind the clock back for all you youngins out there. What is a recession buster? So to my knowledge, Mickey was the first person who I know who termed that phrase recession buster. And it revolved around a budget, low to mid 12-second new edge combination. And basically the keys behind this is pistons from a 4-valve motor. Now, Mach 1s, Mach 8s, 4-valve Cobras. Now you have Lincoln Aviators, Marauders, but back then it was pretty much the Mark 8 was the source for those pistons. And back then, you know, sourcing the Mark 8 motor was still relatively cheap, and they were more plentiful than what they are right now. So the Mark 8 piston is not a true flat top piston. It's a 3cc piston. So depending on what Mustang you had, whether it was an NPI or a PI, you could bump the compression up fairly nicely on these cars and give you a nice boost in horsepower. NPI guys, I think the compression was around 12.5, not 12.5. The compression was around 10.5. PI guys, compression was 11.5, and that all had to do with the design of the combustion chamber on the heads. The NPI had a different combustion chamber volume as opposed to the PI. So, fast forward to today. Well, before I get to today, let's talk about some results from these combinations. And this is what I found on the interwebs.
Yeah, the smell, it's all right. Right?
All right, so let's go over this mod list. I don't want to get into too many details on this intro video on exactly what I'm going to do to my motor that I'm going to build, but I'm going to show you kind of like a budget level, and then I'm going to show you a extreme level on how you can build one of these 2 valves to be faster than a really a bolt-on Coyote swap. So this is one of the original recession buster combinations that I found online, and it consists of basically some modular head shop stage 3 ported heads, some modular head shop stage 3 cams, a stock plastic intake manifold, the flat top, well, I keep calling them flat top, but they're not flat top. They're the -33 pistons from a 4-valve dual overhead cam motor, and everything else is pretty much straightforward. This is using the stock rods out of a 4.6 motor and a stock crank. If you're not going to rev this thing to the moon, you can really go with a stock crank. I remember Sean Hyland tested these stock cranks up to like 650 rear horsepower. So the couple of modifications that I'm going to do to this list is I'm going to go with Todd Warren custom cams. I'm going to go with Big Dog's ported PI heads. And of course, the Coyote connecting rods. This is going to be my version 2.0 to this Recession Buster. And the one thing I do know about this combination, this dyno pool was on 93 octane. And in the comments, they didn't rev out the motor up to 6,500 RPM, or they didn't really rev it out to the limits of the intake manifold. So that number could have been higher. That was on the dyno chart. We just don't know. Don't know how much timing was ran with this 93 octane. Like I say, this was from back in 2011. Things have changed.
All motor, no nitrous.
Now, the first dyno graph that I showed you is pretty much I would call the entry level to the Coyote Buster build. Now, this is more of the extreme. And the video you saw, it's 500 rear horsepower in a build. And in another video, we're gonna talk about the cost breakdown of doing this as opposed to a Coyote swap. But I can tell you, this price to build this 500 rear horsepower version of this Coyote Buster would be the equivalent of a higher end Coyote swap. So if we look at the mod list, you know, the first thing that kind of stands out is this isn't a 4.6, this is a 5-liter stroker build. The compression is right where it needs to be, 12.5 to 1. And in the comments, again, this is a 93 octane tune. This is not E85. So even with E85, you know, this thing could be well into the 500 rear horsepower mark. Another key thing is it's got ported trick flow heads. Now, the technology with the trick flow heads as opposed to the PI heads is a night and day difference. If you want to make big power on a 2-valve, you got to have the trick flow heads. Custom cam, you know, same thing like on the entry level Recession Buster. If you want to make some good power, you have to have some kind of custom cam. Outside of that, you know, besides the long tube headers, it's really nothing exotic. You know, these trick flow heads, unported, you know, they can get up there to around $3,500. The stroker kit, depending if it's fully forged or not, can be another $4,000. So like I say, this is the higher end of a Recession Buster, but it just goes to show you that you can build one of these 2-valve motors to perform just as good as a Coyote motor, and this is just one case here. So let's go over to the garage. I'm going to show you my foundational pieces of my build. But one more thing before I get out of here. So what does all this mean for me and what I'm trying to do? Now, this Recession Buster was well before the Coyote motor. And with the Coyote motor, we have some parts that we can take off the Coyote motor to update this Recession Buster. One of the weak points of a 4.6 engine, the 9 Terminator models, is the connecting rods. So usually around 450 rear horsepower has been the consistent, has been the bar on what you can push these mod motors to. One of the weak links in that was the connecting rod. So if you really want to beef up your 4.6, you have to go out and buy some, forged H-beam rods or some I-beam rods. Now, with the Coyote motor, you can actually use Coyote rods on your 4.6 engine. So yes, you can put the Coyote rod, which is a 5.9333 carry to 3.3, has the same rod length and the pin bore as a mod motor. I think this is Kim coming right now. She's gonna suck all this heat out of this garage. So what does that mean? So you can throw that 450 limit horsepower number for the 4.6 mod motor right out the window.
I made it in time.
All right, a round of applause, everybody. Coach Kimberly Simmons with her first win of the year.
Yay!
So
Today's Walter's birthday. Woo! Happy birthday. Mwah.
all right, sorry for the noise. It's very cold out here. So let's talk about what we got here. This is my old, I actually forgot about this. I had this thing tucked in the corner, buried behind some stuff. I pulled it out. This is a old 2-valve block that I had bought a long time ago. I honestly don't remember what had happened to this. I bought it used. So let's get it on the engine stand, start taking it apart and figure out what we got to do to it. All right, so here's the little 2-valve that could. Now, I don't remember exactly what was wrong with this block. I seem to think that it was a head gasket issue. So the plans, when I talk about high compression, this is what I'm talking about. This is a piston out of a 4-valve mod motor. You can see the top of that piston is pretty flat as opposed to that piston. Now this is a Romeo block. So I believe this is an NPI. I believe this is a PI block. So what's going to happen is when I put this piston on here, this is like, it's not a true flat top piston. It's like a 3cc piston. When I put that on PI heads, that's going to give me a 11:5:1 compression. And honestly, I don't know why we've gotten so afraid of compression nowadays. Like the technology has gotten so much better as opposed to the 2000s, early 2000s, when I guess we really got introduced to cheap force induction. And when that came about, everybody was like, hey, you gotta drop your compression so you don't be popping head gaskets. You gotta drop your compression so you don't have detonation. Now we're in a more technological age where A, we have E85 more readily available, and B, people have gotten better at tuning and the processors are better. So personally, my tuner Decipher at EFI Dyno Tuning, he says go straight to 13-to-1 on these motors if you're on E85. Doesn't matter if you're boosted or naturally aspirated. Since we take this car kind of across the country, we're only going to go 5-to-1 on this motor. Now the 4-valve motor that's at the other house, we're going to go 13-to-1 on that motor because we don't drive that car across the country. And what I'm probably going to end up doing is I'm not going to get rid of my small block Ford. I'm not going to get rid of the push rod motor. But I'm probably going to end up pulling that motor and putting the 4-valve motor in the red car. High compression, 4-valve motor, 13-to-1 custom cams, and it's going to be even this motor. You know, if we can do it right, this is going to be a Coyote killer. So we're going to go full bolt-on mod motor, greater than Coyote motor. Now, of course, that's unless, you know, you have a Gen 3 Coyote. But, you know, Gen 1, Gen 2, I got a feeling with the right combination, and I'm going to show you guys some proof that you can build a hog wild crazy mod motor and not break the bank. Now, there's some builds out here that are stroked. We're not going to stroke it. Like I say, worst case scenario, we might have to bore it and go with some aftermarket pistons. I'm hoping that the piston valve, the piston to wall clearance is good enough with that piston so I can use those. But if we have to bore it out, then we'll just go with some, we'll have to go with some aftermarket pistons. But not too many people giving 2-valve love out here, so I gotta, if I talk the talk, I said this is the most, this is the best motor to build on the Sn95 platform. It's a 2-valve motor, so yeah, I gotta put up or shut up. So we're gonna build this, and I think we're gonna have some great success out of it. So let's start tearing this apart and see what we're up against. So if I remember correctly, this block was not sieged. I was able to rotate it. So what I'm gonna do today is I'm gonna get these pistons and rods out of here. Man, I tell y'all, these mod motors, these some SOBs can take a licking and keep ticking. Look at the bearing on this. Damn, bearing looks perfect on this. Wow, marvelous. Rod bearings look good. So I'm not going to go through each one of these and record it. If I see an issue, then I'll stop and I just want to make sure that this wasn't an 8-bolt crank. Couldn't see the counterweights, but yeah, if there's an issue, I'll stop and record it.